This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Watch out. Don't turn around. There may be something behind you.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And boy, oh boy, you have found yourselves on the Creep Street Podcast. Welcome one and all.
We are happy to have you here.
Of course, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. We're also on Threads. We're on X.
Yeah. TikTok.
We're on TikTok, all that shit.
Oh, yeah. We're all over the place.
And of course, if once a week is not enough for you, just head on over to patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast for all sorts of goodies. Well, we have finally arrived. The last episode before Halloween.
Can you even believe it?
And boy, oh boy, do we have something special cooked up for you.
What are you thinking?
Rather than a single topic, we thought we would go back through all of the Patreon episodes that we've done over the years and find some of our favorite of the scariest freaky stories and present you with them. And keep in mind, this is our 4th Halloween season here on Creep Street.
I mean, can you believe?
I literally cannot believe it.
Yeah, 4 Halloweens.
4 Halloweens.
That's crazy.
Sounds like a romantic comedy. 4 Christmases. Wasn't that a movie?
Yes. It was bad. I saw it.
Well, you know what? This one's going to be good.
Yeah.
This is, forget Reese Witherspoon.
We love her.
Vince Vaughn. Is that who was in it?
Sure, you correct?
Yeah, forget those losers. We are, just kidding, they're not losers.
We love them. I don't really know.
We are going to do the same. Like I said, rather than one story, we wanted to present to you 4 stories that are absolutely terrifying, bizarre, strange, and encapsulate everything that we cherish here on Creep Street. And what is interesting is a lot of these are going to be from good old Brent Swancer.
Our king.
A lot of these, I think, are from Mysterious Universe. Like we said, we wanted to loosen our ties with this episode.
Yes, we want to have fun. You know what? We're enjoying it. It's the weekend.
Yes.
Some would even call it Hollow Weekend.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
And it's just a good time, and we're just here to laugh and to be scared together. And also, it's fun because you're getting a little bit of a taste of what you would hear on Patreon.
That's actually an excellent point, Miss Maureen.
Yes, and for the people that already give to the Patreon, thank you. And don't worry, because these stories are from, the past dang 4 years.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's been a while since I said I'm sorry, and also since you've heard some of these stories, probably.
Absolutely. Well, let's just shake it off. Let's get ready.
Okay.
Put on your bibs.
All right.
This week's episode is 4 Halloween Horrors. That's right. Ooh, tasty, tasty, tasty. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And I believe all 4 of these stories come from Mysterious Universe.
Amazing. Very apropos.
Very apropos, and let's start it off with one called A Ouija Board and a Bizarre Murder by Brent Swancer. So, apparently, Ouija board murders are a genre of the paranormal all their own.
Yeah.
This one took place way back in the fall of 1929, and it concerns 2 Native American women of the Seneca tribe.
Okay.
And forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, but they were members of the Cattaraugus Reservation. Once again, I am so sorry. I'm sure I said that wrong. Nevertheless, I'm doing the best I can.
We're persisting.
And this reservation is located in western New York State near the city of Buffalo.
Oh, you know what? Yes. This is familiar to me already a little bit. I went to Syracuse University, which is, it's not right there, but it's close by. Yes, I did a few projects about the Onondaga. I mean, come on. We're loving this. Yes. Anyway, continue.
One was a woman named Nancy Bowen, a 66-year-old woman who was a traditional tribal healer and herbalist. The other was a 36-year-old woman named Lila Jimerson, who worked as a school teacher there on the reservation. You see, there had been a recent death in the tribe. In fact, it was Bowen's husband, Sassafras Charlie.
An incredible name.
Another tribal healer who died under mysterious circumstances. During the Ouija session, the 2 claimed to have made contact with Charlie, who named his murderer as a woman named Clothilda. The spirit apparently also gave them a description of the killer and where she could be found. It claimed that she lived on Riley Street in Buffalo. Jimerson, the school teacher, recognized the name. She was apparently the wife of a renowned sculptor from Paris.
Oh, very nice.
And his name was Henri Marchland. He had studied in Europe under Rodin, the famously acclaimed sculptor. He made these impressive 3D miniature sculptures of famous historical events. He and his wife had been living on the reservation studying the culture of the tribe. He had made sculptures to capture the life of the Iroquois tribe, and they went on to be a big hit at the New York State Museum in Albany. Why he was there was because he had been commissioned to create a display for the grand opening of the Buffalo Science Museum in 1929. Marchland and his wife, Clothilda, lived on the reservation with their 4 children. Clothilda herself was apparently a very accomplished painter, and Jimerson claimed to have known Marchland for almost 10 years, and had even acted as a model for his work in the past. Just a few short days after their Ouija session, Nancy Bowen began to receive strange letters in the mail addressed to her from someone who called themselves Mrs. Dooley. And in these letters, Dooley claimed to have more information on Sassafras Charlie and his mysterious death, and claimed to know what really happened. This series of letters mentioned witchcraft, hexes, and black magic and murder. The letters suggested that Clothilda herself was a witch, and that she had placed a curse on both Nancy and her husband. Here is an excerpt from one of these letters. I know something secret. I decided that I'd better tell you and help you out. What I can. This is what I know. Charlie Bowen was killed by a witch in this city of Buffalo. It was from a French woman. She killed Charlie because he gave good medicine to sell in the city. Her witchcraft didn't work so good, so she decided to kill him. She has killed many, many that way, native and white. But let me tell you more. She said she fixed another doll the same this doll is his wife, Nancy. Bowen took these letters very seriously, apparently, and became convinced that Clothilda was responsible for this woman's death, and that she would soon be coming for her too. Apparently, one thing that cemented the idea in her head was that Clothilda would apparently often go looking for and gathering mushrooms, a common practice in Europe, but not for the natives, apparently. Bowen specifically referred to them as strange, hellish vegetables. And Bowen went out and purchased a hammer and chloroform and made her way to the Marchland house. The knock came on the door at March 7th, 1930, and Clothilda answered it, not knowing any better. On her doorstep, Bowen accused Clothilda of being a witch before violently beating her to death with a hammer.
Jesus.
She stuffed a chloroform-soaked rag down her throat just to be sure. The body was later found by Clothilde's 12-year-old son, Henri Marchelin Jr. When he found the body, he rushed over to the Buffalo Museum of Science where his father was working and told him. And the authorities came out to the house and were quickly able to figure out that 2 native women had been hanging around the premises before the murder. They also learned that 36-year-old Lila Jimerson was having a secret affair with Marklin. At first he denied this, but had to come clean when they discovered a bunch of love letters between the two. Jimerson told the police that Bowen was the one who actually performed the murder, and she was arrested as well. Her fate was sealed when they discovered she had bloody clothes and even the earpieces from Clothilde's glasses in her possession. The day of the murder, Jimerson had apparently asked Marklin to take her for a ride in his car, and it's assumed that the murder happened while he was out. During the trial, Bowen claimed she had been motivated by supernatural forces to do the murder after their Ouija board session. When that failed, Bowen decided she had to do it personally. The trial also forced Marklin to come clean about his affairs. Jimerson wasn't the only one. Apparently, he had been having affairs with several women from the tribe, and he arrogantly claimed that it was a professional necessity as part of his work, and that his late wife was fully aware of these affairs. The whole thing ended in a mistrial when Jimerson collapsed in the courtroom due to a respiratory condition related to tuberculosis. A new trial was held the following year in March of 1931. This time around, the Jimersons' defense claimed that she was in no way connected to the murders. Also, by this time, Marklin had already moved to Albany and married his 18-year-old niece. Give it up.
Oh, you hate to hear it.
Just kidding, that's weird.
Yeah, that's tough.
And it was claimed that he has asked many of the native women to kill his wife, saying that he was sick of her. In the end, Jimerson was acquitted, and Marklin was never charged, and Bowen was found guilty of manslaughter and was given the sentence served. Strange. So no one actually really served time. Like, Bowen was sentenced, but was sentenced, sentence served.
Time served, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just him waiting for the trial was enough.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Well,
okay.
there you go. A little intrigue, a little murder, a little dangerous liaison.
Of course. It's so funny when people like that dude that's like, oh, I got to sleep with these women
Yeah,
of the
listen.
tribe. Like, it's part of my work.
Hey, he's a character actor.
It's
He's
part
a
of
painter.
my work.
Or a sculptor, sorry.
Yeah, character actor. But then, they like say it's part of their work, but then they are like, these people, they're like, wouldn't consider themselves a sex worker, and like, I'm sure they're like very like anti-sex workers and stuff, and it's
Right.
like, you're doing it.
Yeah.
And also, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
It's not, you can just ask.
Yeah.
Also, it's not that complicated.
Yeah, it's not at all.
I can't imagine it's that different than what he knew.
Yeah.
And if it was, then that's on him.
Yes, it was.
Because that sucks. Well, I guess it doesn't. But anyway, continue.
Well, Maureen, why don't we move on now to story 2?
Yeah.
And this article was called The Bizarre Case of the Tanaku Exorcism by Brent Swanser at Mysterious Universe.
Ooh.
Now, this is something we will cover more in full in a full episode.
Yes, for sure.
But this is a wild story, and I definitely, like I said, it will get its own episode on the main show, but I just wanted to include this as part of these 4 Halloween horrors. Mm-hmm. It's a terrifying one. The story has come to be known as the Tanaku Exorcism, and this story happened in 2005 in Romania. So let's start with a bit of backstory for the victim in all of this. Marisica Irina Cornici. Marisica was born in the small village of Perini, Western Moldova in Romania. Now keep in mind, once again, there's going to be probably names or places I might not pronounce right, and I am wholeheartedly sorry.
Oh, big time.
Now, like with many of these stories, Marisica's life was anything but easy. When she was just 2 years old, her father took his own life right in front of her.
Oh my God, this is like Dexter Damn Morgan.
He had been sentenced to 4 years in prison for stealing chickens.
Oh my God. And also, I know that didn't happen to Dexter, just as similar vibes. Anyway, continue.
Clearly, he did not want to go to prison. He took his life to avoid that.
Oh, God.
In addition to this, Maricica's mother was a huge piece of
Oh, you hate it when this happens.
An abusive alcoholic, she was unable to care for both Maricica and her brother, Vaslim, so the young Maricia was given up to social services. She was taken to an orphanage in the town of Barlin, and this orphanage was anything but a happy place. The source says that at this time, orphanages in Romania were filthy and overcrowded and were infamous for neglect and abuse. Many children would die of starvation and beating.
Jesus.
Maricica was 19 years old when she was finally taken in by a foster family. She moved to Germany and lived and worked, saving up money. In 2005, at the age of 23, Maricica returned to Romania and tucked away in the Carpathian Mountains, Dracula territory, folks.
Oh, spooky.
There was a remote monastery in the village of Tanacu. Now, the village of Tanacu was already a remote place, but the monastery itself was even more isolated, standing on an inaccessible hill.
Oh, okay, the nun vibes.
Very much so. There was no running water and no electricity, so she lived a very simple life.
I mean, that's the real horror.
You know what I'm saying?
Jesus.
The person in charge was Father Daniel Carignan, who the source describes as an authoritarian. While he was strict, the place was a breeze compared to where Maricica had been from. The spooky stuff would begin almost immediately after Maricica had arrived. She would begin having these uncontrollable fits of giggling during Mass, but when confronted about it, she would have no memory of doing it. Things began to escalate to the point that Maricica would have outbursts in which she would blurt out something inappropriate or, crudely sexual. And likewise, she began to report to the nuns that she had begun hearing strange voices in her head.
Yikes. Yeah.
This soon turned into physical outbursts where suddenly she would lash out at both property and people. And by property, I'm guessing the source means, holy symbols like paintings or, crucifixes, things around the church.
She's just doing she's grinding on the railing and stuff.
You're right. She's sliding down the rails.
Yeah.
They're like, get off of there.
She's like, I love my skateboard.
She was grinding. She was doing,
That's the grinding.
It was a grind. It was a nose grind. I will. Yeah. Okay. She was a skater.
Yeah.
It got so bad that sometime Maricica would have to be physically restrained and subdued by the other nuns. And of course, she wouldn't remember these outbursts after they happened. Maricica was sent to a psychiatric facility in the town of Vaslui, and there she was officially diagnosed with disorganized schizophrenia. But despite this diagnosis, Father Carignan and the nuns still believed that Maricia was under the influence of demonic spirits.
Yeah.
And
it can be both.
Absolutely. Oftentimes it comes hand in hand.
Yeah, two things can happen.
On top of this, Maricica's own brother claimed to have seen a demon enter her.
God.
And even Maricica herself had said that she believed the voices in her head were the devil. So this only confirmed the belief in their minds. During her 2-week stay at the facility, Maricica's condition seemed to improve, and she was eventually released, and she returned back to the monastery. Immediately upon getting back, the spooky stuff was back and worse than ever.
Yeah.
Now, during these attacks, she would have seizures.
Oh, God.
She would growl and hiss and sometimes brutally beat herself.
Jesus.
The other nuns would often have to subdue her and tie her down and confine her to her room until she would calm down. Many times, Maricica would even plead to be restrained before she could hurt herself or someone else. It was like she could feel it coming on.
Yeah.
Father Carignan decided that an exorcism was needed. Well, this is one of the most intense environments I have heard of, and this is awful. Maricica was bound by her wrists and her waist and chained to a cross. Next, she was anointed with holy oil, and then prayers began. And when Maricica began to snarl and curse, a towel was put in her mouth to gag her.
Oh my God.
This went on for 3 days.
Okay. Jesus didn't even stay on the cross that long.
This is, truly awful.
What the fuck?
And then the source says she was left locked up in her room until the devil left her.
Well,
Quote, the devil left her.
Yeah, I don't think that's, you know what, that's just not how I would have done it. That's just not how I would have done it. That I would have made some different decisions.
Of course. Well, it seemed like all of this may have worked because Mariska had become somewhat lucid. She was given something to eat, something to drink for the first time in like 3 days. And not long after she finished eating and drinking, she passed out and wouldn't wake up. The paramedics came and Mariska died while en route to the hospital.
Yeah.
The official cause of death was deemed to be a combination of dehydration, exhaustion, and asphyxiation. Father Carignan and 4 nuns were arrested and charged with the death of Mariska. The story became an international sensation, and despite the scrutiny, Carignan and the nuns maintained their innocence and that what they did was just. Father Carignan was even quoted saying, "She was sick and possessed. We said several masses to end the spell. From a spiritual point of view, we did exactly the right thing. God has performed a miracle for her. Finally, she is delivered from evil. It was God's will that she died."
Oh, no.
I don't understand why journalists are making such a fuss about this. Exorcism is a common practice in the heart of the Romanian Orthodox Church, and my methods are not at all unknown to other priests. We did our duty in those moments when you couldn't do anything else. We had to help her. They were found guilty of false imprisonment leading to death, and on appeal, Father Carignan was sentenced to 7 years. One of the nuns got 6 years, and the other 2 got 5. All of them maintained their innocence even while in prison. Father Carignan was defrocked, and strangely enough, in 2014, further investigation into the case was made, and Maricia's body was exhumed, and tests would determine that the likely cause of death was actually an adrenaline overdose administered by the paramedics while taking her to the hospital.
Wow.
So, obviously,
this changes a lot.
Even if that is the case, you still got to say them for horribly abusing this woman.
Yeah, it's
horribly abusing this woman.
In the rite of exorcism, it literally doesn't say a damn thing about being chained to a cross, about being crucified.
Yeah.
You know, that's insane. Like, what? There are so many stories like that with possession cases, and I feel like people are always like, or the perpetrators, they're always like, well, we had to be tough. Like, the demon in there was really awful and blah, blah, blah. It's
right.
Like, okay, well, it's still a human body.
Yep.
So you can't really do things to the human body that you would like to do to the demon.
Very true.
You know, you just can't. It's a hard fact of life, and I hate to say it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I don't mean to be a wet blanket, but like, you can't beat women into calming down.
That's right.
So, this was rough. Like, yes. Sometimes there's a little bit of a gray area where you're like, oh, like, I don't know, it's confusing. Like, right. They were, the priest or the nuns, like, they really thought something was going on, blah, blah. This case, no. This was insane.
Yep.
Don't chain someone to a cross for 3 days. Like, I there are things that I have said on this podcast that I didn't think I needed to say.
Yeah.
I didn't think I would ever say, don't chain a woman to a cross for 3 days, but here we are.
Yeah.
Our fourth Halloween, and I'm saying it.
Yeah, it's just so, it's this girl was tortured. She lived a tortured life.
Yeah.
And then she was eventually essentially tortured to death.
Yeah, it's insane. And that's what it's like. It's the exorcism cases are tricky because they can be so fascinating and so unique and interesting. And then sometimes it can just be like this where it's like, first of all, it's so sad, but then it's also just like frustrating because you're like, this was just such a fucking waste of time. Like, Why did anyone think that this would work or be a good idea? Like, this is insane.
Yeah, and I don't care who your God is. No God worth worshiping would want that.
Come on.
It's ridiculous.
No, it makes no sense.
Well, for our third tale,
ooh,
we once again are graced by Mr. Brent Swanser of Mysterious Universe, and the name of this tale is The Bizarre Tale of Satan's Hollow.
You ever heard of Stars Hollow?
Yeah.
It's like that, but it's full of just ass.
Yeah. That's where Lorelai didn't get pregnant.
This is where she moved when she left Richard and Emily after high school when she wasn't pregnant.
Right.
And she just was in a metal band.
Yeah, and joined an MLM.
Yeah.
Well, here we go. This story concerns a small rural town in the state of Ohio called Blue Ash.
Oh.
It's said that in this sleepy town, there may very well be a portal to hell. Well, like in most towns, there in Blue Ash, there's a series of dark tunnels that work as a storm drain system. But it's these very tunnels where the portal is said to reside. And the locals have come to fear it as a place where dastardly deeds are carried out by shadowy groups. It is believed that these tunnels are often visited by occult groups and Satan worshippers where they perform their dark rituals. On the walls of the tunnel can be found various forms of graffiti, many depicting the number 666 along with images of the devil. And there are even warnings sprayed on the walls that read, "Go back," and "Hell lies ahead." And many claim that there is even a secret altar that can be found. And well, this dark mass of tunnels has come to be known as Satan's Hollow. The tunnels have become widely known as a place where strange things happen, as you might have guessed. Folks who often get close to the tunnels say that you can sometimes hear the sound of ghostly groans and screams coming from out of the dark tunnels. There's even an apparition often spotted in the area, a pitch-black entity known as the Shadow Man. Some say that this specter may even be a demon. It's believed that from out of these tunnels, demons are able to emerge from hell onto Earth. And a local investigator and blogger named Rick Finbers had this to say. "It's one of the best known but least seen urban legends around here. A group of Satanists supposedly used to meet there in some type of altar room to conduct their rituals. They must have been pretty good because the legend claims they managed to open a doorway to hell." But as we know, for some folks, the scarier the reputation a place has, the more intrigued some folks are to go there. Satan's Hollow has attracted paranormal enthusiasts from all over. There was one local paranormal investigator and filmmaker in particular named David Scott, who ventured into the tunnels under Blue Ash, taking with him a video camera to document his findings. He and his crew went deep into the tunnel system, and it was not easy. There are parts of the tunnel system that are so tight that they're hard to even get through, but eventually they were able to find an open space within the tunnels. And on the walls were what appeared to be what Scott described as religious-like markings. Scott was quoted saying, "It looked like something you would see in an exorcism film. The scariest part of being in this location was how screwed we were if some bad people entered the room and wanted to do us harm. We were at the time unarmed and there wasn't an easy escape route. We were miles underground and stuck in a room with only one exit and one entrance." And it was here they realized they may not be alone indeed. They could hear strange noises that sounded like footsteps moving rapidly. Immediately they claimed it felt like the atmosphere of the room just changed. So they busted out the spirit box and they tried to communicate with whatever it was that might be around. And this is what David Scott said happened. "John turned on the spirit box and we began to ask questions to whatever spirits may be lingering around. Till this day, it was one of the most responsive box sessions we ever had. There was an evil and intelligent spirit in those tunnels, and it was happy to have a conversation with us. After asking around 20 questions and receiving a direct, intelligent response almost each time, we decided to head out. Normally, we would have continued on, experimenting with different devices and attempting to catch EVPs. But in this case, I decided to call the investigation short as the responses we were receiving through the spirit box were extremely negative. The voices coming through claimed to be the devil himself. They claimed that there was a shadow man haunting the tunnels and that a man named Jake had been sacrificed down there." Now, the location of what is known as Satan's Hollow actually resides on private property, and oftentimes police are called in to get rid of the trespassers. In fact, local law enforcement has tried to dispel legends about the place. One local officer named Lieutenant Steve Schuler was quoted saying, "We've never had human sacrifice or any animal killings. We've never had any of that."
Well, thank God. I'm glad there's no animal killings or human sacrifices.
Now, this shadow person, I'm getting that it's not a shadow person, but literally some sort of specter that they just call the Shadow Man.
Right. I agree.
I mean, gosh, can you imagine those tunnels and you got, like, nowhere to go? That just alone, like, that.
I'm not into that. That shit scares me. Like, I can't do that. Going through tunnels and I don't know where I am exactly? No.
Yeah, not fun at all, folks. Not fun at all.
I mean, it's horrifying. And that's a thing where it's like, I know people are into this idea of like exploring abandoned places or exploring, just places you aren't supposed to be technically.
Right, yeah.
And it scares me for so many reasons, just like the paranormal reasons, the getting lost reasons, the spookiness reasons. But then also it's like, what if there's just some like crazy person down there?
That's very true.
Like that shit scares me so bad. Where it's
very
like,
true.
Michael Dan Myers could be down here.
Very true. Yes.
And yeah, that shit scares me. I just can't do it. I want to know more about this though. I want to do some more research and I want to hear what you guys think, because I know we got some Ohio motherfuckers in the house.
Yes, we do.
So please reach out and let us know what's up with this, because this is scary.
Absolutely.
Some weird stuff going on in Ohio.
Ohio's got the weird stuff, my man. I mean, what is it? The other one, Helltown, we'll have to do an episode on. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Now, folks, we have arrived at the creme de la creme.
Oh, yes.
This is one, now, just so you know, like all these stories, these are not supposed to be fictional. No. These are either supposed to be true or at least based on, someone is claiming that this happened to them.
Yeah.
So this story is one of the creepiest ass stories we have ever talked about. It was on our Patreon, and this is why we also kind of wanted to give you a taste of what the Patreon's like.
Exactly.
Once again by our good old man Brent Swanser at Mysterious Universe, which, first of all, I'm glad we decided to celebrate Halloween with Brent Swanser.
I mean, it's really fitting.
Rather than doing a straight-up episode, we thought this would be a better way. In fact, we were planning to do lobotomies.
Yes.
And we still are going to do it, but we thought for Halloween, why don't we share tales that you can listen to by the campfire?
Exactly. And trust me, the lobotomy shit that we're going to get into next week is chilling.
So once again, this is by Brent Swanser at Mysterious Universe, and it is called The Haunted Witch's Murder Mansion of Virginia. Which is a pretty wordy title.
Yeah, really, for sure.
But it lives up to it.
I know. I'm excited.
Well, outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, out in the rural countryside, on a dirt road, you may happen upon an old, gloomy, intimidating-looking mansion. This feared abode is known by the name of Dunlora Mansion. In 1724, the land was granted to one Major Thomas Carr by the English crown for his services to the crown. Thomas Carr was also the brother-in-law of one Thomas Jefferson. 6 years later, after acquiring the land, Dunlora Mansion was erected in 1730, and for nearly 200 years, the house really had no history of note. But it was after the turn of the 20th century that dark rumors and legends began to be associated with the place and the surrounding area. In the years leading up to 1920, it's said that the mansion was owned and inhabited by a reclusive old woman, and rumors began to swirl. The area had once been a popular spot for camping enthusiasts, and in 1920 the area was still open to campers, but most of them had been scared away by the tales surrounding the place. People claimed to see strange things near the mansion and in the surrounding woods. Shadow people and mysterious lights were often reported, and some even claimed to have happened upon bizarre rituals being conducted at night. These reports only escalated after the woman's death, whom people had come to believe was a witch. It was rumored that she now haunted the mansion and the land it sat upon, and would chase off any trespassers who dared venture too close. One of the most famous and terrifying tales regarding the witch's mansion happened during the summer of 1920. A group of 6 Boy Scouts and their scout leader had come to visit the camping areas near the old house. They apparently set up pretty close to the spooky old house to amuse themselves. That night, they sat by the campfire and told ghost stories and spooky tales. Well, it got late, and they all retired to their tents. The boys to theirs and the scout leader to his own, which was separate from the boys' tents. After a long day, the scout leader quickly fell to sleep. But in the middle of the night, he was awakened by what sounded like a strange scraping noise coming from the area that the boys' tents were. He could also hear what sounded like a low, grumbling noise. And he thought to himself that perhaps a wild animal was sniffing around their campsite. The scout leader grabbed his flashlight and crawled out of his tent and made his way toward the other tents to investigate. He got over to the tents, and not only was there no sign of any animal, there was also no sign of the boys. The flaps of their tents were even open, gently flapping in the night breeze. He looked inside them with his flashlight, and of course, they weren't in their tents. Their tents were empty. And all around him was a deeply unsettling quiet. The scout leader ventured into the woods with his flashlight and searched for the boys. Time passed, and he called out for them, yet was able to find no trace of them at all. But a movement of light somewhere in the forest caught his eye. He thought maybe it was one of the scouts with their flashlight or a candle or something. So he trekked after the light, and before long he found himself standing outside of the old Dunlora mansion. The light was coming from inside the house. Apparently, when they had made camp, they didn't realize that they were near a house at all. It was buried so deep back in the woods. The house was obviously old and run down and looked like it had been lived in a long time. Yet there was a light coming from inside, like someone was walking around with a flashlight or a candle. Well, now he actually felt a touch of relief. The boys had clearly just gone out to do some exploring and found this old abandoned mansion, and even though they shouldn't have snuck out, at least he had found them. So he called out to the boys, saying to get out of there. 1, because it may belong to somebody, and 2, it looks so old and run down that they could possibly get hurt. But when he called out, there was only silence. Figuring they couldn't hear him, he made his way to the front door, all while calling out to them. Now, standing at the house's front door, it seemed as though no one had lived there for a long, long time. He called out again, but to no response. He went to knock on the door, and when he did, his knock just caused the door to easily creak open. Clearly, the door hadn't been locked, and probably hadn't been for a long time. The door now open, the scout leader peered into the dark void of the mansion as best he could with his flashlight, even calling out again and getting no response. Cautiously, he stepped inside. The interior was as in rough a shape as the exterior was. The furniture was moldy and grime was on the floor. Everything in the house was covered in a thick layer of dust, the perfect description of a haunted house. The scout leader entered and actually looked through the whole house. Not only did he not find the boys, but he also didn't find the source of that strange light he had seen moving about the windows. After searching, he made his way back to the front door and was about to return to the woods to keep looking when a noise caught his attention. It sounded like a boy's voice coming from somewhere in the mansion's cellar. As it was his duty to look after the young scouts, the scout leader walked back into the house, finding his way to the cellar stairs. He cautiously walked down the old rotten staircase to find a wide open cinder block room, and the shadows down there were so thick that the flashlight barely helped at all. But the scout leader stopped in his tracks. There, in the center of the basement floor, was a single scout's hat. The scout leader frantically waved his flashlight about the dark room, trying to find any other clue as to the boy's whereabouts. When the beam of his flashlight fell upon the ghastly, grinning face of an old woman. Her eyes wide, she had a grin that seemed unnaturally large. Her teeth were yellowed and sharpened into points. The scout leader screamed and in a flash was back up those stairs and bursting out the front door of the house. He ran wildly into the woods in the direction of the campfire. While running, the scout leader tripped over something in the dark and he fell hard into the ground. Shaking it off, the scout leader grasped frantically in the dark for his flashlight, which had been knocked out of his hand when he fell. After some fighting around with it, he was finally able to get the light to come back on. And to his horror, he saw exactly what it was he had tripped over. Laying there in a pool of blood and mud was one of the Boy Scouts. His stomach had been ripped open and his guts were fully visible. In a state of utter shock and horror, and unable to even scream, the trembling beam of light that the terrified scout leader held in his hand panned to the side to see all 6 of the Boy Scouts lined up, and all of them disemboweled like the first. The next morning, police were patrolling the area, driving down one of the nearby country roads when they found a man laying at the side of the road. It was the scout leader. He was laying there only half-conscious, babbling to himself. He did his best to describe what had happened, but he wasn't making any sense. So the police made their way into the woods and found the campsite from the night before. Now, though, all the scouts were back in their tents, though they were still dead. It's even said that some of the scouts' organs were found roasting over the dying campfire from the night before. The scout leader couldn't help but babble as he tried to explain what had happened. Nevertheless, he was still arrested for the murder of these boys, and he was sent to an insane asylum. Legend also maintains that seemingly overnight, 7 fully grown, old, twisted trees apparently sprouted overnight, and according to the legend, they represent the lives of the 6 Boy Scouts and the sanity of their leader. Today, the area has been widely developed and is now the site of an upscale residential area. Yet as unscary as that sounds, folks say that scary things still happen in the area. Thrill seekers still frequent the place. One visitor posted about an experience they had while attempting a paranormal investigation with friends on a site called Saturn's Moons. Here is what they tell happened.
It's fairly easy to find the road you need. Dunlora is mostly known for being a rich neighborhood, but while you're driving along the main road in the subdivision, there will be a road that clearly does not belong. It's a gravelly dirt road. I already had a sense of foreboding when we turned onto the road, and as we continued to drive down the road, I spied a wispy, translucent something at the top left of my windshield. It couldn't have been a tree branch because the majority of the trees are bare. Plus, the last I checked, trees don't grow wispy objects. We eventually made it fairly far back when we came across 2 stone pillars on either side of the road ahead of us. Beyond these pillars was absolute darkness. Immediately, we all had a reaction of something not wanting us to be there. We all had this strong feeling at the same time. I immediately turned the truck around and we got the hell out of there. I wish we had gotten pictures, but at that moment, we all just wanted to leave. One of the girls with me has friends who previously explored the area, and they had the same feelings about the place that we did. On Tuesday evening, we will be returning with a posse of people to explore. I don't normally get this way about places. My legs were shaking during the drive away from there. Whatever it could have possibly have been didn't follow us because that feeling left after we got off that road. A part of me thinks that it was all in our imagination, and there are rational explanations for everything, while the other part of me knows that there was something there that didn't want us there.
Now, people often say that the Bell Witch was a big inspiration for the Blair Witch, but this sounds like the Blair Witch Project to me, if you ask me.
I was thinking the same thing.
I know, right?
And I do know that I'm f***ed up because as soon as you said that boy's stomach was ripped open and you could see his guts, I immediately started thinking about the television show Guts that was on Nickelodeon.
Oh, yes, of
back
course.
in 1492.
Of course.
Yeah, so was thinking about that. But yeah, no, these types of stories are so scary to me because kind of like I said before, where it's like you're in an area where, you know, you don't really know what's going to happen with this like structure that you don't know what's in there and all of that stuff. It just scares me. It's like, I
Right.
think because maybe it's because I have never spent like a prolonged period of time in a rural area.
Right.
Like the idea of being in a place where no one could hear you scream.
Exactly, right.
Like that is so frightening to me.
yeah, it's horrifying.
I mean, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking?
I mean, it's so hard to, there's no way of really proving how much
Yeah.
of this is true, but that's not the point for me.
Yeah.
It's the story of this location. I have a feeling the notorious Nicholas Barker will like this one.
Ooh.
I am really taken by this story, and that's why I wanted to share it. I wanted to create a compilation for Halloween of these stories from our Patreon, these shorter stories that just leave a sense of mystery. It's not just horror, it's a sense of mystery.
Yeah, where it's like, there are some parts of that story, and all of those stories we've told today, where we've said this so many times on the podcast, but like that there are parts of it that you don't believe, or you're just like, I don't think that probably didn't happen. But that doesn't mean that the whole thing didn't happen. It's
Right.
like these stories, it's just natural for things to get kind of tacked on and things changed a little bit. But like, I mean, the core of the story, though, it's like, what happened there? Like,
Yes.
oh man, were you in Boy Scouts?
No, I remember I went to one meeting when I was a little boy, and it just wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah, I was a Girl Scout.
Yeah.
So,
Good for you.
well, I was a brownie.
Yeah.
And then right when I got to Girl Scouts, when I got that green sash, I left. I really just wanted the green sash.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
It was awesome.
It was a good sash.
But yeah, this is like, really, really, that's so funny. I'm glad you mentioned the Blair Witch, because I was thinking the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And we love nature,
Yeah.
but it's a lot. It's scary, and that's why I like nature light. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like give me a forest preserve.
Right. Absolutely. I hear that.
Those are like some scary stories to listen to by the fire, for damn sure.
Hell yeah. Folks, from the bottom of our hearts, happy Halloween, and we love you all dearly.
We hope you all have a lovely time. Have fun if you're trick-or-treating, if you're getting super drunk and dressing in a slutty manner, if you are playing board games with your friends, if you're watching horror movies alone. Whatever you're doing, we hope you have just the best time. And to let us know what you are up to, what you did for Halloween, or what you're going to do for Halloween, like DM us or email us at creepstreetpodcast@gmail.com. We want to hear what you're up to.
And just a real quick birthday shout out to the fire starter Heather Carter, whose birthday is October 27th.
That's right.
When this episode comes out.
Happy birthday. We love you.
Now, Maury,
Yeah.
I got a list of names I wouldn't mind visiting Dunlora Mansion with.
Okay, go on.
Folks, give it on up for our top-tier Patreon subscribers. Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish Face Fiat Lundqvist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud Carl Staub, the Fire Starter Heather Carter, the Conqueror Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Sir of Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez, the Maniacal Laura Maynard, the Vicious Karen Van Buren, the Arch Nemesis Aaron Bird, the Sadistic Sergio Castillo, the Rapscallion Ryan Crum, the Beast Benjamin Huang, the Devilish Chris Doucette, the Psycho Sam, the Electric Emily Jiang, the Renegade Corey Ramos, the Crazed Carlos, the Antagonist Andrew Park, the Monstrous Michaela Scher, the Witchy Wonder J.P. Weimer, the Freaky Ben Forsyth, the Barbaric Andrew Barry, the Mysterious Marcella, and the Hellacious Kale Hoffman.
Whoa, wow, whoa. Thank you so damn much to our top-tier Patreon subscribers. You guys are amazing and fantastic always. And thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers. And thanks to all of you for listening. We love you so much. You're great. Keep it up. Now, a little reminder, I'm going to be filming the first episode of our book club here very soon, any day now. So please go ahead and go to our link tree on our Instagram page, and there'll be a link to a Google form where you can fill in any thoughts or questions or ideas or anything like that about this month's book, which is, once again, I'm in Love with Mothman, because I want to hear your thoughts and I want to talk about that on the episode. So please head on over and do that.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.